Well, I guess that's a no. Old timers. Let's move
Hello,
on.
hello. Mike, can I ask a question? Very simple. Did the
Yeah,
Magnavox game box ever arrive and it get working?
I don't know. I know something arrived, and Blake was coming down on the 23rd, um, which was yesterday. I haven't heard from him to know if he was coming, but I think maybe that's what that was. Okay, Larry, why don't you go back to the new display case back in the color area? Okay, this is our display of rare tiny sets that Dan Jones spent a lot of time getting going, and the and other people too, but Dan in particular because the case arrived damaged. He had to straighten it out, make it work. But we've got a little Sony Chromatron at the top that belongs to Matthew that he
Nope,
got it.
down one. There you
Yeah,
go.
that's the Sony, right? Yeah. Um, and he got it working. It's got a weak CRT in it, but it's pretty neat. And then the one up top is from Dave Abramson. It's a JVC. Dave, since you're on, why don't you say something about it?
It's it's a field sequential television or monitor. It was designed for production use, field use, but it's in a field sequential format, and it was sort of borrowed from an earlier Tektronix concept for a scope. Now I don't know if JVC licensed it or whatever, but it's a full-fledged monitor. It has a little built-in tuner, which is enough for us to use, but it's field sequential. It's inside that thing is a pretty high voltage black and white CRT. And in front of that, in that gray surround, is three layers of LCD, one red, one blue, one green. And they pick off the signal coming in. I'll keep it as simple as I can. They pick off the signal and show it to you in red, blue, green, just like one of those color wheels right next door. And it's an astounding color picture. It's just spectacular. But it was designed for use for production companies, out in the field. Maybe a jib operator would have one hanging on there because it's so bright in daylight. It worked great for these people outside. And it's fun to look at. You do the old wave your finger in front of it trick, and you can see the different red, blue, green going by. It's I think Marshall, forget his last name, out there in Arizona has one. I think those are the only two I know of. But I'm glad to have it on loan, and hope the public learns a lot about field sequential.
Yeah. Yeah, and we really appreciate both you and Matthew agreeing to put these on long-term loan with us. They're really rare sets. Anybody got any questions?
I see the slide display set next to it. Is that working now?
No, it we plugged it in at the convention and there's something arcing inside, probably something simple, but it did work before it was transported down here. just haven't had a chance to work on it. Okay, thank you, Larry. I think that's all we need from you. Okay, if nobody has any questions, let me go on and say a little bit about the convention. Then I'd like to hear comments from other people. As you probably know, this is the first time in a long time that we've done the convention totally at the museum. And we invested in some comfortable chairs and some rubber flooring to make the area a little bit nicer. And it worked okay. There are a lot of glitches with the layout. This PA system with feedback. When we put the chairs out, we didn't put a aisle down the middle, so getting to the chairs was difficult. But overall, it went pretty well. The weather did not cooperate. That didn't affect our indoor activities, but did affect the swap meet, which was pretty well a washout. This first time we've had drizzle before, but this first time I can remember that we've had really bad weather. Some of the comments from people who attended the convention were, "Why don't you get some tents?" And we've thought about that. It's sort of difficult. They're expensive, and then who's going to put them up? But that's something that's under consideration. The swap meet went pretty well. I mean, not the swap meet. The auction went pretty well. We had some pretty good items in the live auction. Nothing spectacular, but some stuff that sold for several $100s, and it was an interesting bunch of stuff. The silent auction, we are really reconsidering how we do that for next year. Maybe eliminate because we got a lot of complaints about that, and there are a lot of issues with the logistics of it. So we're thinking about making it, rather than making it a silent auction, making it a sale, where people who bring their things in put a price on them, and put a minimum price they'll accept, and then people can either take it or leave it. This is still in the early stages. We've had a conversation going among board members about how we might improve that. So that's one of the things we're considering. Presentations. One of the things that was suggested, I think by who was Chuck, I think suggested it. Suggested that we reorient the warehouse area and move the stage over to the east wall in the warehouse. That would get it away from the noise and disruption of the door opening, and then face the chairs toward the stage there, and then relocate all the stuff that we're keeping and that's going in the auction along the west wall. And we're looking at that. I think that's very doable. And I think that would make it better for a bunch of reasons. We also are going to do something about the PA system. We've had that system forever, and it has not been a problem before, but this time it was, and I'm not quite sure why. But go ahead.
It's just a matter of if I'm the auctioneer, where I'm standing, I just happen to be right in front of a speaker that's laying right up there in front of the CRT storage. If you reorient the room, that's fixed.
Good. All right. The presentations were good. I think the neatest thing about it is we had a 13-year-old boy make a presentation, and he had mic issues because I forgot to change the battery, put a new battery in the mic. And that sort of threw him off a little bit, and he was a little nervous. But it was really neat to see somebody that young making a presentation. Dave?
Steve?
Yeah. No, go ahead, Mike.
I'm 73 and the mic cutting out threw me off a good bit too.
Yeah,
It just,
right.
I think 13, 14 times during my presentation. And I don't know if it was because I was down low sitting in a chair and not in range of it, but like you said, if it was the battery, that would explain it too. And I know I'm fussier about doing the presentation. I'd asked weeks ahead of time about a lectern or something that I could have my computer on and a hookup. And we ended up on cardboard boxes that were kind of wobbly and the computer leaning off the edge of the table. And it's just, it does throw me. I'm not a professional speaker by any stretch. And I put a lot of effort into thinking ahead of time how I'm going to do it. And then things throw you off.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. The reason for that, we did have something for a lectern worked out. And in the confusion of everything, I had so much going on, and the older I get, the more forgetful I get. So I forgot to say something about putting the lectern back up on the stage. So that never happened. Next year, one of the things I hope to do is to have a couple of people who are specifically responsible for setting up the various aspects. We've done that in past years, but what happened is that the guys that I've counted on for doing that were all up to their ears in making getting the displays set up, and so they sort of didn't have time to do the stuff they'd done last year. So hope to fix that for next year. We have a whole list of things that came from the survey we took, and also from our observations that we hope to implement next year.
You,
Going to be videos of the presentations available?
Yeah, um, I have not. I don't. I have taught. Matt said something about when he was there. I said, "How? When are you going to get them on YouTube?" And he said, "Oh, as soon as I can." And nothing has happened. And I've emailed him with no response. So, Dave, I don't know if you know anything new.
No, I've asked them to send me the footage so that I can, do a quick edit on it and pop it up on YouTube. But I have not heard back from him, which is very unlike him.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I had an interesting time. I tried to get on for the business meeting, at least on Sunday, and I kept getting a message from Zoom that said that the host already has a meeting in progress and goodbye. So I never saw the business meeting. I intended to. I had the weekend from hell, but which is why I wasn't there in person. But it would have been nice to have been able to stream it and see what's going on anyway. The auction too.
I had several complaints about using Zoom too, rather than the ways we've done it in the past. So, um,
Zoom
I don't
usually
know.
okay. So I mean,
Yeah,
but I don't know. It was
yeah,
weird. I was, you know, trying to get on and just see what was going on, and I couldn't. So I don't
right,
tell you other than I couldn't. So, but I didn't know
right,
if you knew that or not. So
right. The We had 110 attendees, about 30 of whom were new, had never been to a convention. That was sort of neat. And the other thing is that a bunch of old timers showed up that haven't been there for quite a while. Daryl Hawk, um,
yeah, Steve Kissinger.
Steve Kissinger, John Folsom. Um, who am I missing? Bob Gallanter. Guys that hadn't been there for several years. That was good to see. Um, we learned a lot. Next year it'll be better. And I think the feeling is that we can go ahead and use the museum for the venue. Food trucks worked out pretty well. I had good comments about that. There are always a couple of people that don't like the food and think it's too expensive and um, whatever. But for the most part, people like the food trucks. So those are all my comments about the convention. Anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, Steve, you mentioned that John Folsom is going to be donating a lot of his collection. Can you explain,
I can.
where that
I
might
gave-
go?
Yes, I gave John a ride to the airport on Sunday, and he said, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I want to thin out my collection. I want to get rid of about 80% of it. And my plan is just to give it to you. And whatever you want to use and put on display is fine. And you can sell the rest of it. So he has quite a collection. And he said he was going to make a list and hope to get it done in the next month or two.
Is that something to plan for next year's convention?
I think so. I think so. While we're, let me mention a couple of other things. This is a little off topic. I probably should have covered it with a museum report, but there are two things that I hope to get done pretty soon. And we've already started on one of them, and that is the storage locker we use. Seems like they raise their rate every month. We're now up to $300 a month for it. And I'm most of the way through building enough shelving to store all that stuff at the museum. And Bob has started there. There are presently about 80 tubes over there. And Bob came down. Well, there were 110, and Bob came down and brought 30 over the other day. So each trip he comes through Columbus, he's going to go pick up a load or two, so we can get out of there and save that money. And if any of you had experience with storage lockers, they're always a pain in the ass. So that'll save us, $3,600 a year plus keep everything at the museum. The second thing is the painting of the building. Talking to a couple of people who were in the home improvement business, their feeling was that the only thing that really needed to be painted was the east wall of the warehouse area. That's faded. And the two garage doors. The rest of the building is in pretty good shape. So looking at just getting those painted. Haven't given up on getting a mural put up. I'm still pursuing that. That would be neat, I think. And then along with that, we have some leaks in the roof. And we're going to get some quotes on repairing those leaks.
Have you heard anything more from Hilliard or Old Hilliard about any forward progress?
No, none. And I think that's sort of dead. They are extremely helpful with us. They were at the convention, the Hilliard Tourist Organization and the city manager for downtown Hilliard were both there. We worked out an arrangement with the city manager she called me and said, look, is there any way we can use your parking lot during the week? And we worked it out so that during the weekends we'll have exclusive use of it, which is what we care about, and obviously for conventions and things like that. But the rest of the week it'll be open for the public to use, and they're going to pay part of the cost of maintaining the parking lot. We haven't gotten specifics about that, but I imagine they'll do the restriping and things like that for us. And the tourist organization is promoting our auction. I mean, our sweepstake. They're sending emails out to their mailing lists and things like that, which is really nice. So, but nothing's happening in terms of the building itself.
Hey, Steve, has anyone from the town with ABC people of contact about a mural? Because a lot of towns have people volunteering to do murals. they might be a resource for that. And the other thing is, if you're going to do a mural, I was wondering if you had sketches done first, if members could vote on the ones they like, because it's kind of like a tattoo. Once you put it there,
Yeah,
it's going to
right.
be there for a while.
I think that's a good idea. I explored if there's anybody who did it on a volunteer basis. Didn't do much. I just talked to the city and to the people at the art center, and they said, "Nah, you got to pay for it." Now, I haven't done much to explore it. Maybe somebody would like to do it as a volunteer, but I think that's a great idea about having sketches and have it approved.
Is there any room on the property for a shipping container for storage that you could put maybe behind the building? I don't know where the property lines are. And would the people in Hilliard just freak out if you did that? Although you can paint them so they look okay, but they're cheap and you can get one for about what you're paying for storage for a year. You could own it and put the picture tubes in it or something. Just an idea.
You know, we had a semi truck parked out there for years, and the city made us take it away. And then that area where the chain link fence is in the back, on the west side of the building, is our property. But as I understand it, years and years ago, when I applied for zoning, I didn't request that that we be allowed to store anything back there.
No.
So they've told us we can't put anything there. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't go to the city and ask for permission, and probably would get it if we did something that was attractive back there.
Well,
I
they
think
don't
that's a
have
good
to look
idea.
horrible, and it's a very cost effective. We've decided that in Texas we're building a storage building, the 60, no, I'm sorry, that's 20 by 40, I think, storage building, and this has been a nightmare. The first thing the city said was, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And it kind of has gone downhill from there, but they're supposed to pour concrete sometime this next week. But so
Wow.
far, the concrete's costing more than the building, which is just really swell. But we want someplace to put stuff because you can't put it in the museum display base, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things.
The storage units might be good in Texas, but I had them in New Jersey at my place, and with the right weather combinations, change in temperature and all, it could be a sunny day outside and it's raining inside the unit because it just condenses on the ceiling and drips all over. So
Well, that's a possibility. You got to be careful what you put in there. But I
yeah,
was thinking
so
picture tubes or something, and you may need to put a ventilation system in the thing.
yeah.
The CRTs won't mind being 130 degrees or something.
Yeah, right. Boxes might.
Yeah, the boxes might, but
Yeah. Okay, that's all I've got. Anybody else got convention topics to talk about?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
one semi-request suggestion, however you want to put it, Steve, is I know we talked briefly at the foundation meeting about arranging for porta potties for next year's convention.
Yes, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that.
Any thoughts on where they will be placed?
Probably right back by the garage door. That's what we've had them in the past, and that's where we put them.
Thank you.
Of course, that was the other nightmare, was the toilet clogging up. Porta potty would alleviate that.
Hey, Steve, what kind of batteries does your wireless mic use there for your auction?
Regular 9-volt batteries.
I was going to say, I wish I'd known that. I've got hundreds of them.
Well, we had them. In fact, at the end, I changed it. And in past years, I've changed the batteries before the convention, and again, I forgot. So just having a fresh battery in it is all it needs.
My church uses those Pro Cells and stuff, and they change them out with every service. They just don't want to be without and you get
Yeah.
a 9-volt battery and it's still good for almost 9 volts. I wish I'd known that. I would have brought you a box of them.
Yeah.
Number two, you were talking about your video game room, video game stuff. Somewhere around about 30 years ago, Magnavox came up with the Odyssey, if you remember that. And that was designed here in Knoxville because Knoxville was the headquarters for Magnavox. And of all the crazy things, the guy that designed it and stuff, I have a lot of his posters and stuff and all of that. And I think I have a lot of duplicates in that. I've never thought about it, but I may have some stuff you might want. And speaking of Magnavox, you were talking about wanting to do VCRs and stuff. 1981, Magnavox put on a big splash here in Knoxville at Westtown Mall, and all of the corridors of Westtown Mall was filled with just nothing but Magnavox products. Now, this is 1981. VCRs had just come on the market and stuff.
Yeah.
And anyway, they used, Matsushita made a lot of those piano key things, and most of them were sold under the RCA name, but everybody had them. Well, they had one on display there. It was probably one of the first ones that they had ever come up with, and it's got a plexiglass case on it, and you can see the insides of it. And I remember looking at that, and I thought, boy, I sure would like to have that thing and all of that. Well, many years later, I was talking to a friend of mine, Joe Zonin. He was the chief engineer up there at Magnavox for high voltage. And he and I are good friends. And I was describing that VCR to him. And he says, I have that unit. I said, you do? And I said, I'd like to have it. And he says, well, if I can find it, it's yours. I think it belongs to my wife, but anyway, she won't mind. But it took me about 2 years for him to find it, but I've got it. Something that's just unusual. And somewhere in my collection, I've got 3 or 4 of them. I've got some early video tape things. They're I think they were prototypes or something. They're very unusual, built in like a wooden frame. They're not that large, but I've got several of them, and you might be interested in having one of those if you ever do that kind of display. But what's your thought?
No.
I think I've lost audio here or something from you guys.
Oh, Steve, you're muted.
So I am.
There you go.
Yeah. Julian, that would be great. Next year when we do that, let's talk.
Okay, I'd be happy. I'll have to, I know where this stuff is. I've got it stored over at my other warehouse, but I got a
Right.
whole bunch of that stuff for Odyssey that you'll never see again. And I might even have one of those TV sets that they made. They
Oh,
had
really?
2 Molex plugs on the back of the set for their hand unit, and stuff. I mean, I think it just played pretty much Pong and stuff like that. But I think I've got one, but I'm not sure. But
Let me have Matthew DeSaro contact you to see if there's anything that would work for our present display.
I think you'd like some of those posters that say, Odyssey. This guy,
Right.
the artwork. But he lived here in Knoxville, and they had an estate sale, and I ended up buying. I think I received most all of that stuff that he had, but I've got a bunch of it. But it's stuff you'll never find, that still exists.
Right.
It's designed and built here in Knoxville, and
Right.
built up in Greenville, of all crazy things.
All right. I'll have Matthew get in touch with you.
That'll be great. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. Mhm.
Steve, one thing from the convention, I think you mentioned that young kid, teenager that did that presentation, the last presentation used that little Akai camera. But he was very interested with his dad, who was there, in those 3 TKP 45, very early news gathering cameras. Have you heard back from them at all, or?
No, I talked to him and his dad at the convention and said we were very interested in letting him, work with them. But I haven't heard anything since then.
Steve, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, what's going on with his name is Charlie, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
So what's happening is him and his dad are coming to the museum on either Saturday or a Sunday for a few hours, and they're working with those cameras out back.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. Those cameras, if they're up and running, would be a great display. And we've
Right.
got 3 of them. And you could probably, if you get 1 running, that's great. You might be able to get 2 out of 3 running.
Right.
And we've got all the pieces there.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Well,
I think-
guys, I can tell you that they've got it set up. If you guys got a minute, I can walk on out back and let you see what he's got going on if you want to see that.
Oh, they've already started?
They've already started. So I tell you what, unless you guys got something else to talk about real quick, I'm gonna walk on out back and just kind of let you see what they've got going on, because I've had to kind of organize and move a few things around so they can have just a spot to work on. So they did not come today, but they did leave a note. So they're looking to come tomorrow. So I'm just going to give you guys just a quick look of kind of what they're doing. And then I'll turn all this back over to you guys. So as you can see right here on the table, they've got some of these units right here that actually I organized and put them over in this one spot with the cables on the floor. They got one camera right there. And then over here, they've got this set up right here that they're working on. So I'm not sure where they're at in the progress, but they've made good headway over the last couple of weekends.
No, that's good to see they found that tripod that goes with that kit.
Yes, it was all in that case that you see right there, right behind it.
Yep.
So anyway, I just wanted you guys to see that they are, kind of got things pulled out, got some things connected, and they're just kind of working on a few things.
Hooray.
All right, that's all I got, guys.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
That is fun to see them working on the TKP-45. That was the camera that preceded the TK-76 shoulder mount. So the TKP-45, rather than a news gathering camera, was really a mobile production camera.
Right.
Wonder if they've got the manuals for it. Because that would be pretty useful getting them running again.
Yeah, we have tons of manuals that aren't RCA stuff, that aren't cataloged. And I'm going to have Larry see if he can find anything.
Steve, can you help me with this kid's name? I don't remember.
Charlie.
Charlie. Thank you very much. I'll bet Charlie doesn't need the manuals. He'll just figure it out.
Well, I think getting those cameras running should be great. I mean, the thing that got me interested in TV in the first place was seeing myself on color TV. And of course, video today to kids is common, it's everywhere, but seeing it come out of a piece of old gear that's older than they are ought to be attractive.
There probably be need for a lot of replacement of capacitors, and the Plumbicons will need to be reawakened. Generally, as I understand it, the Plumbicons sort of go to sleep. The cathodes They don't die, but they benefit from several hours of filament operation before they'll have enough beam current to make a picture.
I guarantee you that kids like it. We have several instances in Texas where we have a working news set and chroma key and things like, and a full studio with 6 cameras in it, and they have a blast. In fact, if you are giving a tour and you get to the camera area where they can be on TV, you lose total control. It's just the way it is. But they have a great time, and they can't imagine that this has to come out of this giant thing rather than their phone. So it's a different world. Get the cameras working; it'll be worth the trouble, even if you got to cheat a little.
Absolutely. And then figure out his display. And boy, I'll be glad to work on that one.
Just need more space. That's all.
Well, anybody else have any other topics they want to talk about?
Well, Steve, I'd still like to get together with you on one of those film chain cameras back there, one of those
Okay.
black ones back there. I have the other half to it, and I'd like to make
Right.
a complete set. So keep me in mind on that.
Sure will.
Steve,
Yeah.
if anyone hasn't gotten a chance to look at the newsletter, I really appreciate your input and the little piece I did about Cliff and his work on the field sequential sets over the years. And there's also a little piece in there about the JVC monitor that we just looked at.
Right.
So if you haven't opened that up, take a look. I think that's worth reading.
As usual, you guys have done a great job on that.
Just a little side note, I just picked up a 1/2-inch open reel color VTR that came from Cliff's estate. It's sitting on the floor in my den. It's running a little off speed, but thank you to Nick for rescuing that and turning around and getting it back to me. And it could be in your VTR display someday once I get it stable.
Hey, Steve, I just received an email from Matt Patteray, and he said he'll have the video files over here tomorrow. Your mic is off again.
Fantastic. I've got lots of people who are asking for it.
I know these meetings are archived somewhere or other, but I've never found out where. Maybe wouldn't be a bad idea to review where that is, because I've kind of wanted to look at a couple of them again. I assume they're on YouTube, but at YouTube I've gone to early television and get all kinds of early TV shows, but not Early Television Foundation. So
I'll send a link out. They're on the Early Television Museum YouTube site, but they don't show up unless you click the button for live, since these were live recordings. But I'll put that in the chat.
that would be great, because I figured you had to know the secret handshake or something,
Well,
and the password or something.
I'll get that information over to Steve also, and we can be a little bit more specific about that on the website.
Yeah, I might put it in the newsletter too.
And I'll
Good
get it
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mike.
just for friends,
yeah, I think once you find it, you can subscribe and then you can always get back to it.
Yeah, but you got to find it first. That's the catch. There's
a-
an awful lot of stuff on YouTube. I mean, you could spend your day strolling through YouTube without much trouble at all. So
I don't know if they meant that it applied to YouTube also, but there was an article in the New York Times a year or so ago, and they were talking about the changes in the television broadcast industry, and the title of the article was it just shouldn't be this difficult to watch TV. And I have to say, since we gave up cable a couple of years ago, between the problems you have with your internet connection, the problems with Wi-Fi in the house, the Amazon Fire Stick or the TVs. I mean, I literally, it's a joke in the family here that we'll put the little a little 24-inch TV in the kitchen, and we'll put that on to maybe watch the news while we're watching dinner. And it's got a Fire Stick on the back of it. And for whatever reasons, it's usually working and not stuttering and not going to some strange channel or rebooting just about the time I'm finishing dinner. Takes forever.
I find I can spend most of the evening just scrolling through the menu on these things, on the streaming stuff. I really kind of miss the days. And I know I'm old, but when there were 3 channels, maybe 4, you had TV Guide, you go look at it and go, okay, fine, I'm going to watch Lawrence Welk on Sunday night and whatever, or Disney's Wonderful World of Color. And you didn't have a lot of choices, so it was pretty easy to figure out what to do. And now when you go through, there's thousands of things in your menu. And really fine print too, which is also kind of a pisser, but they tend to make it that way. So it's really hard. You can spend all night just sitting there with your thumb. I think I got carpal tunnel syndrome on my thumb from just clicking the up down button on the remote control.
Yeah. Well, that was the other joke in our family, because back when you had the piano key VCRs and remember the clock that always blinked 12 o'clock. It was hit or miss whether it was actually going to record what you wanted when you wanted it. And the joke was, we'd go out and we'd set it to record, NYPD Blue or something, and you come back and they go, oh, it recorded Lawrence Welk again.
Yeah, the only
We talk about the fine print menus. I've got a little Chinese DTV converter to feed the CTC5, and they make the menu print so small you can't read it unless you know what the headings are. And I can't imagine that they sold any to countries that use Chinese characters, because they would definitely just be blobs.
Somebody needs to come up with a television converter or something that works like these phones you see and advertised in the AARP magazine that are real simple for seniors.
the jitterbug.
Yeah, like the jitterbug.
Yeah, right.
Something like that only has 3 or 4 channels.
With really big buttons. My wife was complaining she couldn't read whatever it is, the Fire Stick or whatever we got. And we took her to the eye doctor and found out that she's almost blind. The only thing she could see on the screen was the letter E when it filled the entire screen, and so she's now had cataract surgery, but she still doesn't like reading those little, all that fine print. I got to admit, I'm a little challenged with it too. So.
Well, all these choices on television are actually being researched by sociologists, because when we only had a few choices, almost half the country could have watched the last episode of MASH or something. So we all had something in common, and they're really kind of disturbed by the fact that everybody's in their own little tunnel vision nowadays, bringing people apart, not together.
think that's a really big issue, actually, because it was. I mean, you had 3 or 4 choices, and everybody watched. Everybody watched the last episode of MASH, and everybody watched the last episode of Dallas. But I mean, I didn't like Dallas, but I watched it anyway.
And where the hell is Walter Cronkite when we need him?
Well, that too. We could really use Walter these days. You had no idea where he stood until after he got off the air, and that was fine.
Chuck, this is a little off of subject here, off the topic, but I have a question for you. The presentation you did the last meeting about your radio stations was really good. I enjoyed it, and I have listened to your stations, which is what brings my question up. I know if I'm streaming your music here into New Jersey, you're not making any advertising revenue off of that, but you do have to pay probably for every song I listen to. Does that create an issue from your perspective as a broadcaster?
Sort of. It makes streaming not really attractive, but on the other hand, we do it because people locally listen to it too, if you in your office or wherever. But most of our advertisers, if you've listened, are pretty local, like restaurants and things like that. And they really don't care. I mean, we got somebody in Helsinki, Finland that listens all the time. I mean, it's like 24/7. I can go knock them off. They come right back. There's another one somewhere in Germany that listens all the time, a couple more in England. And our advertisers really don't care, because they're not coming to lunch or whatever. But it's just, I guess, part of the price of doing business. But one of the problems is that the Congress, here we go. These guys are loose cannons. They actually determine the rates, which are going up. It's going to be 1/4 cent per song per listener, which you have to account for, which is a real fun thing. I use a service called Live 365 to do it because they do they do the accounting for me, because I was doing it direct with Sound Exchange, which is the people that you have to pay that Congress set up, which is actually owned by the RIAA, which is basically Sony and the other music companies. But at any rate, I used to spend about 2 days a month trying to fill out their reports. So it's worth the money to me to clear up 2 days a month, because I'd rather work on my museum or the radio station or old cars, or, sweep the floor or do whatever you need to do, wash the windows. There's all kinds of other things that seem like a lot better idea than giving a list of how many people listen to this particular song. So, we do it just because you have to. And I'm happy to have you listen. Live 365, the good news about it is it's a flat rate tiered system. So, it doesn't really matter to me until we get over the tier. And then the tier we're at right now is affordable. If we go over that, it's going to get really expensive really quick. And I'm not really excited about that. But we haven't so far. I must admit, I do go on every day and ban basic people's IP addresses if they're real hogs about it. But there's 3 people in Washington, D.C. that are on all the time. And I can ban their IP address, and they apparently have an unlimited supply of IP addresses, and they come right back. So I don't know what to do. Just grin and bear it, But I'm happy to have you listen. So it's great. It is amazing that you can listen to weird radio stations from strange places, and that it's free from the listener's point of view. It is always nice when actually we have several listeners that actually contribute money. There's a link on our website where you can send $10 or something, which it helps. It's not a big deal, but it helps. And some people do that. Not a lot, but a few.
And as I've mentioned to you, it's just absolutely amazing that almost 100% of the songs that you play are exactly the ones I wanted to hear.
Well, that's good. We're doing something right.
Yeah, really.
I got 2 stations, so if you don't like one, you might like the other, or vice versa. Who knows?
Oh.
And a lot of people like both of them. So one's a little more adventurous than the other. But
Chuck, do you have an idea why these people keep coming back, plowing in? You ban them and then they come back.
I guess the radio, wherever they live, sucks so bad that we look pretty good. That's about the only thing I can think of.
I had K-Dog one afternoon, and it's really good music, and I really enjoyed the station. And people, when they get kicked out, they probably just think something went wrong on the internet. So of course
Yeah.
they try again.
I think that's absolutely the case. They think, oh, well, Time Warner or whoever they're getting their internet from, is terrible, and it doesn't work most of the time, and it drops out. Same thing when you're watching streaming TV. I mean, I've sat there watching streaming TV, and all of a sudden the whole thing pixelates for no apparent reason, and you got to go log back into the thing, and that's always fun. So I think people are getting used to that. That's kind of sad, but it seems to be the way it is. So, um,
Should not be this difficult to watch TV.
No, it
I still like when we had three. I grew up in an area where we had four stations actually, and that was pretty good. And my grandmother actually took TV Guide, and she would underline what she wanted to watch. And when a new issue came out, she would have it all circled and stuff, so that for quick reference that we're going to watch Perry Como on Wednesday night on NBC, because we have to.
Yeah, I was we were a little bit closer to the Manhattan area, so we had a whopping 6 stations to choose from. And I remember as a teenager climbing up on the roof of my father's house because I had bought a nice FM receiver and putting up a much larger Yagi, one for him and my mother to watch TV. And I had lost interest in watching the shows at that point. And I put up a monster antenna for picking up FM stereo. And
You did that too, so.
And it worked just fine.
No, it does. It's amazing what a good antenna does. In fact, the little town I grew up in was about halfway between Boston and Providence, Rhode Island, and we could pick up both markets. Of course, the same thing was on each channel. Although I remember the Three Stooges were on a Providence channel just before the news, and so if my parents didn't have the TV tuned on to something, I was watching the Three Stooges off of Providence because the backside of the antenna would picked up Providence fairly well. It was a little snowy, but at least it worked.
It was good enough.
Yep.
Interestingly, we just had a new hire at work, and she grew up on a ranch, about 60 miles southwest of you. And
Really?
I mentioned the KDOC station, and of course she headed for a computer and looked it up and said, I've heard that station because apparently she had some friends from college or something that are in your area. So she was all happy to hear something from the old hometown.
Well, KDOC is actually a real heritage station. It was originally Tyler. It's now Kilgore, but I have a transmitter in Tyler anyway. And it was a breeding ground for a lot of disc jockeys that went on to really great things. A lot of them, the next move from KDOC was usually KLIF in Dallas, which was the big top 40 station. Gordon McClendon was the guy who was one of the big he was one of the real early people in top 40 radio, and it's a very, very popular station. And people from there went on to Los Angeles and Chicago and Boston, New York, and all kinds of things. It's actually quite amazing. So it was around since, well, I guess they got their call letters sometime in the early 50s. I don't remember exactly which, but it really was a breeding ground almost for radio talent. I'm sure they paid them, 75 cents an hour or something when they started there, but it was actually a really good station in a really small town. At the time, Tyler, Texas was maybe 50,000 people, maybe. And KDOC was a 1,000-watt station. And one of their slogans, there's another station, and I've been thinking about using their call letters KGKB, which was the other top 40 station in town, and they were like 250 watts. So KDOC, one of their slogans was, "We don't poop at the loop," because KGKB did. So, and actually, I have the station that was the original KGKB. It's now a 1,000-watt station, and it's on the loop. But anyway, it has listenership. We got sponsors. I guess life's good.
And I just wanted to get a better feel for what it costs you when us pains in the neck come in across the internet.
Well, it's not crippling or anything, but it is it's an expense. But these days you got to do it. That's all.
And that's recurrent every month.
Yes, every month.
You also have quite the deep playlist. I noticed that.
Yeah, we have KDOC's got playlists about 1,300 songs or so normally. QXFM's about 1,800 songs. Most radio stations, 300 or 400's it. So it gives you, and actually I'm planning on adding some more stuff to both of them. That just as we age, all of a sudden things, the 60s are farther away than they seem, but there was some good music back then.
There's a lot of good music from over the years. You just got to weed it out.
That's true. I mean, they're still making some good music today, although it's harder and harder to find.
Yeah, that's I think there's two things going on with that. One, it doesn't resonate particularly well with our age group, and the other is it is hard to find.
Yeah, you got to look. There are some groups out there that are really good, and our age group would actually like them if they heard them. But that's you got to start somewhere, and that's a problem. But there are good musicians out there, and people writing songs, but there's a lot of it that, well, I don't know about you, but rap music and hip hop and stuff just doesn't work for me.
It never did for me, no.
No, never did for me either. So that's a divide right there, because kids like it. I mean, you pull into Walmart and there's somebody's got their car stereo turned up to 120 dB or something, and you're listening to some rap song or something. Uh, okay, I guess that's what they like.
Well,
Now, when you think about it, though, when I was a kid, I was listening to the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, things like that. A lot of the stuff I play, and my parents hated it. They just really didn't care for it. I mean, I'd be up in my room with my stereo playing, and I'd get the holler up the staircase, "Turn that damn thing down!"
Yeah, my father lacked the appreciation for rock and roll when I was younger. I'll put it that way, to be
Yeah.
polite about it.
Well, when we take family trips, I was usually in charge of the radio, and that was sometimes an argumentative thing. But
Chuck,
you're not supposed to like it. That's part of the deal.
Chuck, do you have a request line down there?
Well, no, not a request line, but you can call and ask us, and we won't play it. But
Well, I'll just ask the owner.
there you go.
Find some room for a Texas Western swing band called the Hot Club of Cowtown out of Austin.
Don't know them offhand, but there are some good Western swing bands around, and you're more likely to hear Western swing. You will hear some on QXFM, specifically Asleep at the Wheel. They have a wonderful album. It's called Ride with Bob. Bob Wills is what they're talking about. And they're
Yep.
great covers, and it's really well recorded, and it's good stuff. So
Western swing is something that never really became popular here on the East Coast, or if it did, it was long, long ago and mostly forgotten.
no, I don't think it ever did. When I was a kid, my mother was from Henderson, Texas, which is the next town south. I've got a Henderson Street address where I'm sitting right now. I'm 18 miles from Henderson, but my aunt had a radio program on a little tiny station called KGRI in Henderson, and she was on Saturday mornings doing Rusk County history. And when I'd come down and visit, because we'd have the family trip where we had to come to see all the Texas relatives, because I have a lot of Texas relatives, or at least did. And I would go with my aunt to the radio station, and I loved it. I hated her show. It was about as interesting as a bowl of cold oatmeal or something to me, but because I knew nothing about Rusk County history, although I live in Rusk County now. But at any rate, I befriended the guy who was the station manager. And it got to a point when I'd come down and visit, and I'd be stuck in Henderson with my aunt, uncle, and grandmother for a week or so every summer, it seemed like. She would take me she went to work in the county courthouse. She worked there, but she'd take me to the radio station in the morning on her way to work and leave me with this guy named Tom Perryman, who's the guy, and he was playing hillbilly music, and I'd never heard this. I mean, they didn't play it in Boston, I can tell you that. I had no idea what he was talking about, but he indoctrinated me with it over several years. We became good friends until he passed away about 10 years ago or so. But it was the kind of music I'd never heard before, and I've actually got some appreciation for it. Some of it I didn't think was very good, but some of it really was. And I think that may be what got my interest in radio to begin with. Maybe something else, but at any rate, it certainly influenced me for whatever. Um, and I guess I can thank them for that. That station is long gone, but it was a kind of interesting little. It was real country. Uh, they had this little house on a hill with an antenna sticking out of the thing, and at the foot of the hill they had an old car. Must have been like a 49 Dodge or something. It looked like a charcoal briquette. It was upside down, sitting in front of it, and they had handwritten on the side of it, "I flipped over KGRI."
That's pretty
Really.
good.
I've thought about doing that in downtown Kilgore because we've got a building in downtown Kilgore. I think the city fathers would get really upset about it, but maybe not. Who knows?
You'll probably get a notice about having wrecked cars on prem or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sure I would. That it's not licensed. Or,
But between when you do it and when you get the notice to remove it, you usually have about 90 days. So you get some good added.
well, that's true. I mean, it would be very visible. It's right across the street from a big church, so yeah, a lot of traffic. Oh well, I might do it sometime. But I don't know what I'd get for a car. I mean, the 49 Dodge that looked like a charcoal briquette with wheels on it was almost said everything. So
I think that's a good idea.
well, I've got a TV mobile unit sitting here where I am right now that we don't have space to put inside the museum, and it's a Gerstenschlager, 1973 Gerstenschlager with the original tires on it, so it's a little iffy to move. But I've threatened to bring that and put it in front of the museum and paint our name on it. It's licensed and insured, so I don't think they can do anything about it if it's on private property and it's got a license plate that's valid. Um, I mentioned it to the city manager. He said, "Oh, that's not a bad idea." Because they got a sign ordinance that, if you don't, we're in the historic district, so if you you have to be very careful what you do. There you go. Hey, it looked just like that. That's good, except it was black, I remember, but um, I don't know what happened to the pictures, but
Oh, there it is.
yeah, top 10 roadside. Yeah, there you go. Edison generator. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that one.
that's cool. Yeah, that was the idea. I don't know. This must have been 1958, 59, 60, something like that. Um, so I don't know who thought of it first, but it's not a bad idea.
Well, if you
There
have,
was a guy who owned a Packard dealership in New Jersey here, and he lived in a upscale town nearby the shop, and I forget what the original he was what I think what they politely call a gadfly. He liked to make his opinions known to the powers that be that ran the town. And I don't know if it had to do with a car or something else, but they told him you can't do that. There's a regulation on the books. I think it had something to do with parking a boat in his yard, actually. And so he went and he studied the township regulations, and it didn't say anything about having an art installation. So to this day, if you drive through Mountain Lakes, New Jersey, if you know where you're going, you can go and you can see a large boat in a large tree in his front yard. And they tried to make him stop, and he spent a lot of time and a lot of money, but they have no rule against it.
Okay, well, sometimes you got to read all that fine print. I know I just downloaded the latest version of Kilgore's code stuff. It was like 86 pages of fine print. And there's some stuff in there that you go, you what? What were you thinking when you passed that? So, oh well. Working with the powers that be can sometimes be quite interesting, especially when you go in and ask them, I'd like to do such and such. And they go, no, you can't. And then you got to start arguing. And Kilgore's been reasonably friendly. So on top of that, because we're a tourist attraction, they like it when we put people in hotels and stuff. I'm sure same thing in Hilliard. I'm sure they like it when tourists come, spend money.
Talking to him.
Yeah, most municipal leaders like when people from out of town leave some money with them.
Yeah, that's usually where the rubber hits the road, is when it cuts down to cash or even credit cards.
Yeah, any form of income for the
Yes,
municipality.
exactly. So they get very interested in tourist trade. So, and I don't blame them. I mean, it's a good deal for everybody.
The nice thing about the tourist trade is then they leave, so you don't have the municipal support services you would have to have for a resident, but you did get some money out of them.
Yep. And we benefit a little. I'm sure ETF does too. I'm sure there's a hotel occupancy tax in Hilliard, and you know, the we get a little. We get credit with the city actually pays for some of our promotion stuff. They won't let us. They don't give us the money, but they at least at least they will buy advertising and various things. Hey, now we could put a boat in front of it too. Oh, I like that one. That's really good.
That's excellent.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's you know, okay. That's perfect. That and a pickup truck with a hood up and a tree growing through the where the engine was, and the caption that says "Ran when parked." I wonder how they did that even. That's pretty incredible.
You got enough money, nothing's impossible.
No, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You throw enough money
Well,
at it, it can be done.
well, that's not always practical, however.
All you need is a fast growing tree.
Well, they got some of those. Well, here we all are. I haven't eaten dinner yet, so I'm thinking about signing off here fairly soon because I didn't eat lunch either because we were busy today. So
Yeah,
I had a well-balanced breakfast of a donut and some brownies at lunchtime. I guess that was what it was.
yeah, sounds like you're due for a good meal.
Yeah, I probably won't get one, but at any rate, I was sitting here eating chips and salsa when we first signed on because I was starving to death.
Now there's always the barbecue. It cooks things quick.
That's true. Yes, I can incinerate a steak right away if I got the steak.
Thanks again for that presentation last meeting. That was interesting.
Well, I'm glad it was. I never know how things like that go. So, actually, that's one of the reasons I was kind of curious to go figure out where the archives are these, so I could watch it and see if it was good, bad, or indifferent or horrible. 'Cause you just never know. But it was a little off topic from TVs, but it's all the same stuff. It's
Everybody's their own worst critic. That was one of the many better reviewed meetings we've had.
oh, really okay. Well, I've done it before, not that same spiel, but at any rate, I've done it before, so I don't mind it. I actually kind of find it's fun, but that's probably pretty weird all by itself. So
Would you have any interest in doing that for a different club?
sure.
Let me reach out to the powers that be over NJARC and see if maybe we can do something. It would have to be via Zoom, of course. We are in New Jersey or Texas.
Yeah, it'd be a little awkward for me to just come. I was in your neighborhood not too long ago. Unfortunately, I was there for a funeral. I was in Philadelphia, which, uh, frankly, flying to Philadelphia and back from here is not high on my list anymore. It was a miserable time.
That's got to be these days.
We showed up at Philadelphia Airport to along with two cousins of mine, and returned the rent car, took the bus, took forever to get a bus to the terminal, got to the terminal. There's about 500 people standing around in front of the American Airlines ticket counter, and there's nobody at the ticket counter, and all the little kiosks said out of service. And we're going, oh, great. What does this mean? And they made an announcement that said there's a system-wide computers are down on the entire system. And I don't know what they meant by entire system exactly, but at any rate, it took forever to get into the place. And my flight was about 3 hours delayed. And then when I got to Dallas to change to come to Longview Airport, where my car was parked, I got off the plane. It says flight canceled. That's really good. Well, we can put you on the 10 o'clock flight tomorrow night. I'm going, well, that's not going to work out real well. I tried to rent a car one way to drive home because it's only about a 2 hour drive, and they wouldn't rent any one-way cars. So I finally got my nephew to come and pick me up, and I got home about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was,
Well, you could have flown into Newark. We've had
I hear it's
had
even better. Yeah.
3 instances within the past month where the air traffic controllers lost all radar contact and all radio communication contact with all of the planes in the air.
Yeah, and I think they actually do Philadelphia too, out of Newark.
There's a back and forth. A lot of Newark is actually, the radar actually is Philly based.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was down or not. I do know there was 1 billion people around. Well, my cousin and I ate a $29 12-inch pizza, split that for lunch at the airport. It was great. It wasn't bad pizza, but it was $29
Yeah,
plus tax and tip. But it's a real mess, and I don't know what they can do about it, but it's probably they're using a Tandy TRS-80 computer to run the whole thing or something.
now some of that equipment is big part of the problem is ancient computer hardware.
Right.
Bigger part of the problem is how they're communicating from airfield to airfield. Some of that equipment goes back to the 1960s. And they never upgraded it. They never replaced it. They're still running on old Verizon copper, which between corrosion and squirrels, it turns out squirrels seem to like to polish their teeth on the lead wrappers around the pairs. And we had that problem down at the airfield I work out of. And it got to the point where there were so few pairs left that could even be spliced, and the telco will not put new copper in. So I had to get 1 million signatures, because one thing that was affected was the elevator phones and the old regulations where they had to be CO powered, read copper. And it was not an easy thing, but I finally got permission to put them on fiber.
Well,
and they are trying to do some of that for the larger airports, and they are using fiber, but the problem is the equipment on the other end cannot run at fiber speed, so they have to down convert.
that's handy. That works out really well, I'm sure.
Doesn't it?
It's everywhere. We have a guy in the Antique Radio Club used to work at the nuclear power plant in South Jersey, and he used to go to the antique radio flea markets, and there was a certain tube that he was always looking for, and whenever he found one, it was like, oh, that's great, now I've got another spare for work.
Oh, great. That's terrific. I just really love that. And we're going to land airplanes with you with that. Well, it goes beyond that too. Being a radio broadcaster, we have to participate in the emergency alert system, which is supposedly voluntary, but it's not. And it is totally screwed up, just like the air traffic control. Their equipment is ancient. It doesn't work. It doesn't talk to each other. When they get an alert, like a monthly test or something, you can't understand a word that comes out of the thing. It's so garbled. It's pretty useless. And then National Weather Service, that's about the only thing that's really good for if there's a severe storms or tornadoes or something like that. Then maybe you'll get it. But I'm on a first name basis with a guy at the NWS in Shreveport, which is where our weather comes out of, because we get it off of one of the repeaters that's closer to us, and about half the time it's not on, and they don't know that it's not on. I mean, I'll call them up and say, we're not getting anything on 142.6 or whatever, 625, I think it is. And they go, oh, well, it says it's on. Well, no, there's nothing coming out of it. They don't know. And they're using the internet to connect it together. So when the internet craps out, nothing works. So
So they don't,
Uh,
yeah.
Geez, maybe Zoom's not so bad in comparison.
no, Zoom's actually pretty reliable, all things considered. You know, I mean,
What's-
it usually works just fine.
I know you're obligated to have that equipment. That's you got to pay for the equipment, and is there a fee to join in, or
No, you no fee to join in, but you got to buy. They keep moving the goalpost on things, so you have to keep buying new equipment. Each one of those boxes is about $3,000.
ouch?
Yeah, they are, and there's only one supplier of them anymore. There were two, but you are stuck buying these things, and they'll do some kind of update. The government will go, well, we're going to add this new alert, and they go, well, your old box isn't going to work with that, so you're going to have to buy a new one. And I've got a whole stack of them of the old ones. If anybody wants some, they're completely useless. They're not heavy enough for boat anchors or door stops. But you know, if you got some way you can repurpose a two rack space box with a bunch of buttons on the front of it that doesn't do anything anymore, uh, I've got some. Maybe there'll be museum pieces sometime, but
What over it cost to ship that from Texas to New Jersey? That might be a nice thing to display in the in our radio technology museum.
well, I could fix you up with one. Probably about $50 to ship it, I'm guessing, just the way shipping is these days.
Let me find out.
Okay, well,
That might be an interesting thing to have in our display in one of our displays.
I have several versions depending on, and we've got some at the Broadcast Museum too. In fact, I know I've got some just sitting on a shelf because people bring us their old box and go, here, and go, well, thank you so much. We appreciate the donation. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but we appreciate the donation. But I'd be glad to share the wealth with the things. I mean, I'd like to know that they do something rather than sit on my shelf here.
At least that people, because it's one of the things that people never, on the receiving end of broadcasting, it's stuff people never see.
That's true. They have no idea how it works. It's the thing that makes the, as they call it, the duck fart sounds.
Yes, they hear that sound, but they don't know what it's about or where it comes from.
Right. But otherwise, they're pretty uninteresting box. They're just black front generally. I've got one sitting around that actually had the printer built in it. Used a printer from a Casio
Calculator.
calculator, yeah, and it would spit out, 3 feet of adding machine tape, basically, with your alert on the thing.
Jesus Christ.
And then you have to go staple that into your logbook because you have to log it every week that you got it. Now, there's no reason why we have to do that because the boxes these days are capable of sending an email to anybody to say that we got the we got the alert, but they don't do that. So, but they can do it.
How often do they upgrade these things?
Well, it's been random, but I've got 4 or 5 of them. So in the 20 years I've been doing it, about every 5 years, I guess.
For a few years.
And that's kind of seems wasteful. I mean, because they're just e-waste products at this point. Unless you just wanted to, basically there's a little PC inside the thing. I mean, you open these things up, and you'll find that looks like a motherboard out of a Windows computer.
That's probably what it is.
Basically what it is. That's basically what it is. I mean, and it's a little scary that it's a Windows computer too, actually, when you think about it.
That was that was one of my famous questions. This goes back some years. We were looking at a couple of different options in one of the places I was working. One vendor had this little box, and I said, well, is that Unix based or Windows based? And they looked at me kind of funny, and I said, well, I would like it to be reliable for the price.
Yeah.
And everybody in the room got a chuckle out of that, except the guy trying to sell it to us.
You're right. Well, here it's running Windows XP or something, and it's wide open to the internet.
I have been. We did a video wall down the hangar, video wall upgrade about a year and a half ago, and that's now all controlled by what looks like a little Dell computer, but it runs Unix.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had to tell that thing to restart itself exactly once in about 18 months.
An awful lot of professional equipment runs on Linux, little boxes that do things, and
it just keeps running.
Yeah, well, it's much more bulletproof. I'm not a Linux expert or anything, but I do know that it works. and that a lot of things, well, for instance, see if I can pick up one of these things, these little boxes right here. This is what streams audio. At least it's one of the varieties you can use. It's these aren't all that great, but they're made in China, but from a German company called Barracks, and it's basically a little Linux computer in here that does streaming audio, and you send this off to your run audio in, comes complete with RCA jacks, great, real professional, connect up to the internet, and it'll start streaming. And you have to go stream it to a server somewhere, which you get to pay for. But then that's what comes out of it. And this was on the air not too long ago. It's not anymore, but I found a better one that's made in Bulgaria of all places. But that's the easy way to do it, other than using a PC or something. But those are more reliable. At least when the power goes out, they come back on where they were.
Yeah, they pick up where they left off.
Yes, rather than being let's go to YouTube now or something. But I know a lot of these things it's probably a Raspberry Pi inside the thing, basically.
It wouldn't surprise me, or one of the other small boards.
Right, there's a whole bunch of them, but probably something along that line. These things, the power supplies crap out on. That's their number one problem. But they work pretty good on a private network. If you're on your own network, you can stream from one to another. They have a send and a receiving box, which they call an in-streamer and an ex-streamer.
Streamer.
And it actually works pretty well for that. I think a lot of things like Walmart radio and stuff like that, when you're in stores, or you go in the CVS and they got CVS radio going, that's how they get it, because it's cheap and it works. Usually.
I guess the days of the using the subcarriers on FM are gone for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's past tense, pretty much. I think there may be a few reading services for the blind that in some major cities that still do it, but for the most part, it's cheaper to do this. I mean, these boxes are expensive for their size, but they're really not that expensive in the great scheme of things. And like I said, they're just doing one thing. It's a single purpose device. So you consider it like a toaster or something. It makes toast. That's what it does. It doesn't let you surf and do anything else.
You plug it in, turn it on, and it does what it's supposed to do.
That's the idea anyway. So. Well, I'm thinking about dinner, frankly. It's 8:36 my time. I don't know about yours, but
and we're 9:36 here.
Well, then I'd be really hungry.
Yep. Well, thanks again, Chuck. I appreciate it.
Okay. It's good to visit with everyone. But I think I'm going to sign off here and let you guys carry on. Right. Have a good evening, everybody. See you soon.
Should we call it an evening?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna probably take a break here and relax a bit.
Okay. All right. Good night, all.
Good night.